Just having unwavering belief that you will get there. No matter what challenges are thrown your way, there's always something you can do. You can quit, that's always something you can do, or you can always find a way. So that's where I've gotten to over the past couple of years of building this from scratch. If you say it's over, then it's over. But if you say, no, there's something I can do to fix this or change it or do it, then you can keep moving forward and keep the ball moving.
Welcome back to the Nichols and Dime Show. I'm your host, Chris Nichols. Today, our guest is Eric Johnson, founder and CEO of Trident Coffee, a craft cold brew coffee company based out of San Diego. I really enjoyed this conversation with Eric. We talk about his background in the Navy. He went to the Naval Academy, spent 8 years serving in the Navy, and then transitioned out of the military and pursued entrepreneurship. So we talked about what motivated him to do that, how he started making his cold brew when he was overseas in Iraq, and the impact that he strives to have on the veteran community. We also talk about a lot of business strategy with Trident. We talk about the marketing and branding a lot specifically. I find it very fascinating the way they've used these nautical themes and this influence of health and wellness within the branding and message that they promote. We cover distribution and product strategies and what it means to craft your legacy, which is Eric's theme. And then, of course, lessons learned throughout Eric's entrepreneurial journey. This was a really cool full circle experience for me since I've been familiar with Trident Coffee for years. I've been a customer purely because I like the branding and I like the way the cold brew tastes. So it was a very genuine appreciation that I had when I was looking to learn more about how this business started and how it's grown, how he's scaled, and what he's learned along the way. But really cool to connect with Eric. We got connected through mutual friends, and I'm thankful to get to know him now. This podcast is brought to you by Legacy Capsule, which is a custom video podcast as a service, a digital memoir for you to get for a loved one in your family, or if you just want to leave a message behind for your family to have forever. Go to legacy-capsule.com to book a time to talk about what you're looking for, or hit me up directly on any of my channels and social media. And now for the podcast with Eric Johnson. Enjoy. Eric Johnson, what's going on?
Not much, Chris. Thanks for having me on, brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. We're at the new Trident Coffee location here in Pacific Beach.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. We wanted to be in PB for a while. We got a great opportunity, so we had to snag it and turn it over pretty quick, but here we are.
Dude, it looks great, man. I love the way you guys have set this up. It's in a prime location in PB. Everyone sees it right here on Mission Boulevard, right? And then the other two places you have are in Coronado and Imperial Beach, right?
Yeah, so we started the thesis of this cold brew coffee brewery down in IB, cheaper property to rent. So we have our production facility down there tied into another tap room, and we opened our Coronado tap room in 21, kind of during COVID. And then this opportunity came along, and we had to snag it.
That's awesome, man. Well, you're hitting all the right spots, especially with the Navy influence that goes into your brand, right? And Imperial Beach and Coronado are big Navy destinations, locations with a strong community in that. And PB, of course, is just has a lot going on. I mean, as we see out here, we've got all glass walls here surrounding the shop, and I mean, we might see some characters walking by during this podcast. Who knows?
The people watching is fantastic. So
I
when we were
imagine.
doing construction, it was hilarious. It was
good. Man.
But yeah, the cool thing about IB for me and my family, so I had my grandfather was in the Navy during World War II and then retired and then moved down to IB. So IB has been a very special place for my family since the 60s. And so we got that opportunity to open that up. And it was really cool to have my dad involved, helping do some of the construction. And then, worked our way up the Strand into Coronado for, again, strong military presence. Our brand really resonates with the nautical themes. So it was a really good kind of test market for not only the military, but people who weren't familiar with cold brew. It's a little bit older crowd in Coronado. Right. And so landing here in PB is, I think, pretty prime spot for us for people in the health and wellness, a little more cognizant of what they're putting in their body. And so it's not as hard to explain to them why this cold brew with the umbrella of health and wellness is important, especially in the coffee space.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I do want to ask about those values that you have. It sounds like health and wellness is a big value, right? Obviously, there's a influence with your branding from your time in the Navy and your family's time in the Navy. I had some family in the Navy as well. My family's from Coronado, so this is something that's close to home for me as well. And I found Trident on my own before I knew you, right? And I love the branding, and it honestly was the reason why I bought it. I bought it because the branding was so good. It represented something that I care about, and I think that probably goes for a lot of other people out there too.
Yeah, it's obviously hard. Obviously, a big part of starting a business is how do you differentiate yourself. And so being from San Diego, really seeing what the craft beer industry did for the past 25 years, really starting with Carl Strauss, Ballast Point, Coronado, AleSmith, the kind of the heavy hitters. We really looked at what Ballast Point was able to do because of how they were able to turn it from just a name or a beer type, lager, ale, whatever. They created this symbology and storytelling around their products, which was fantastic. And so that's what we really leaned into when we created this brand, and Trident being the epicenter because it's the most powerful nautical symbol that it's around. And then we were able to dive into other kind of tranches with nautical themes that allowed us to play off of that. So for us, that's who we kind of emulated when we started this thing, was looking at the success of the craft beer scene and seeing why wasn't anybody doing this with cold brew. Everyone was just following the Starbucks model with espresso-based drinks, a lot of milk, cream, and sugar. And so we thought there could be a better way to promote coffee as a truly craft beverage. This is what the craft beer scene was so successful with for the past 25 years. And so that's how we kind of dove into this kind of problem and how we were going to solve it by providing health and wellness with coffee, because there's over 500 million cups consumed a day in America.
Wow. So you founded Trident in 2017.
Yep.
And we're going to get to your story before that in a second, but since we're on this topic, I'm curious, what did the landscape of cold brew in retail look like at that time, from what you recall?
So I went to the Specialty Coffee Expo, which is held in kind of different places every year. This year was up in Seattle in 2017, and I was kind of finalizing my thesis of what I wanted to do for this brand and this business. And I was talking to people that had been very experienced in the coffee space for the past 20, 30 years. And they all just kind of laughed. They're like, espresso is the only way you're going to enjoy good coffee. This is the way it's done. And cold brew is just a fad. And so I kind of looked at that, but I realized the problem with people who are so ingrained in systems is that they lack creativity, they lack innovation. And so for me, I kind of butted heads with the military a little bit, especially towards the end of my career. I started to look at things very differently. And so I didn't say I wouldn't get in trouble, but I would question things a lot more, which, people in the military understand, higher ups don't like that.
Sure.
And so I took that in 2017, knowing that these established people weren't even thinking about cold brew. They didn't see the potential. So I saw that as an opportunity to really dive into the cold brew space, which is what we carved our niche out of. And so it's been very well, we've done very well with it, and it's what we're known for. And now the trend is starting to pick up. Cold brew is growing at 26% a year, and Starbucks is selling 75% of their beverages cold.
Wow.
So we kind of hit the mark with what we wanted to do. We knew we were a little bit ahead of the power curve, but it's one of those gut feelings that I just felt that this was one of the right ways to do it, and it's really landing, especially with younger consumers that are diving into the cold brew space.
Interesting. Yeah, and there's so much to talk about with this market and your distribution and marketing strategy. But I do want to understand the founding story of Trident and your background specifically. What motivated you to become an entrepreneur? So my understanding, you spent how many years in the Navy?
I did 8 years total on active duty.
Okay, 8 years. And there was something you said online that I really liked. And you wrote it, I think it was your LinkedIn, but you basically said, I understand the challenges and opportunities that transitioning from the military to civilian life can bring. This is why I founded Trident Coffee Roasters in 2017. That was something that stood out to me because it is a very difficult transition for so many people who are getting out of the military. And I just had a recent podcast actually with a coach who's focused on helping athletes transition out of their sports, right, and into the real world, right, whether they're going from high school or from college or from professional. It's a massive transition when your life is fully into this type of thing. And I think there's a big parallel with people in the military transitioning out. What does that mean to you, and why did that contribute to your motivation to start this business?
I think it's definitely something that needs to be discussed more. There's a great nonprofit called Merging Vets and Players that actually tackles this exact problem. They take professional athletes and they take military veterans, and they kind of partner them together, because when you wear a uniform for 20, 30 years, either it be sports or a military uniform, a lot of your identity gets wrapped up into that.
Right.
And the military does not really like you being an individual. And so same thing with sports. It's a team game. You got to do this. You got to sacrifice for your team. So you're always, for the most part, military and sports, you're always putting others ahead of yourself. And that's an admirable trait. It absolutely is. But you kind of lose a little bit of yourself in that process.
Sure.
And so the transition for me was, I did 4 deployments in 5 years. Absolutely loved it. My only option after...
You said four deployments in 5 years?
Yeah.
Wow. That was busy.
It was pretty fast paced.
Yeah.
I wasn't home very much, but I loved going overseas. I loved my job. I did engineering construction, so we would go and build bases, contingency construction. It was a blast. I got to do some amazing projects overseas and loved every second of it, working with Navy Seabees.
Yeah, that's cool work.
But as I kind of got through, my option when I came back was like, hey, you've done so many deployments. We have to send you back to a desk job for your career progression. And I was like, but I don't enjoy it. So I decided I wanted to get out and try this entrepreneurship thing, just because I wouldn't say I got jaded, but I definitely was thinking differently than a lot of my peers were, who were just on the track for 20 years and riding the ship.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to venture out into some new waters and take some risk when I could. And so the transition for me, I think along with many other people, is very challenging. Ever since I was 18, technically I was in the military going through the Naval Academy, which is just 4 years of education, but it has a military component to it, obviously.
Sure.
And then, so from 18 to basically 30, I was wearing a uniform. And then, the transition phase, like there's really no guiding steps or process. A lot of guys would get out, go for further education, or go get a job working for somebody else. So there's a few that venture out in entrepreneurship. And so I decided to take the leap. But it definitely is a challenge for sure, because of this ego component that we all have of tying into our identity. And when you lose that, you feel you lose the camaraderie, you lose those connections that you've had for people in the military. So you're kind of starting fresh. And so that is definitely a challenge for a lot of people as they get out.
Yeah, and this is making me think of, it's not putting your product completely aside, the cold brew coffee, the business you've built and started, because there's something else you said on your website which aligns with this, and that was you want to inspire people to craft their own legacy. So in a way, you're really serving as an inspiration for other people in the military, that they can go and start their own business too and make a successful transition like this.
Well, I mean, you look at the stats coming out of World War II, majority of the entrepreneurs were veterans. The skill sets you learn, the small unit leadership, the drive and the vision, the military really does help you establish that. But again, the hardest part is how do you take that and how do you morph that into your own thing? So the creativity side, the military really hammers down. Like they don't want any creative thought,
Right.
just like follow orders and do what you're told. And so for the creative types, that is definitely something that is very powerful when you can actually unleash that. So for me, this whole craft your legacy kind of mantra, if you would, is that everyone has their own genius tapped inside of them, right? So how do you utilize that to create a better world and then in part leave a legacy for others and leave the world in a better place? So there's a great book called Legacy that's written about the New Zealand All Blacks. And they have like 15 different lessons that's all about leadership and teamwork and things like that. And one of them is about basically leaving it better for the next generation. How can you do changes here? How can you make progress so the next generation has it a little bit better than you had it? And then that's a ripple effect generation after generation. So that is something that really stuck with me. I think it's very important that we are here. There are times to be selfish, but we do so much better when we work together and have a collaborative approach to bring in progress that is helping us move further down the line. And so you've seen that in the military. I've seen it in personal relationships. And so it's trying to remove that ego as much as possible to still do what feels right, but don't let it get in the way from stopping you from helping others get further along too.
And then in that journey, it requires a sense of individualism too, but you're just referring to the balance that one should have.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. I think a lot of people struggle with finding balance, especially in today's world. It's very challenging to, I've been writing burnout for probably several months now. But I think this is very important. As best you can, find something to bring you back to center. Just because it's a very fast-paced world we live in. We're always trying to do more. We're always trying to be better. And that's not a bad trait to have, but it can lead you down the line that where the ego really takes over and tries to protect you too much and it shields you away from trouble and danger. That's the whole point of the ego, is to keep you safe. But that can be a detriment if you let it override the system and take over too much.
Right. That's interesting. I do want to ask you about that later on, especially because we're going to talk a little bit more about the entrepreneurial angle that I take on this show. And then some of your ways of dealing with that, right? Because there's constant challenges. But just back to the founding story. One thing that stuck out to me about your story that was super interesting was you started to make cold brew when you were overseas, when you were deployed, right? You were in Iraq. Tell us about that.
So military people are big caffeine junkies, especially on deployment. So it's always funny. So my first real iteration into coffee culture was in Israel. My Israeli counterpart would take me over to his side of the base every morning. He'd make Turkish style coffee, which is like straight up jet fuel. And we would sit down and have a conversation just like this. And it would take about 15, 20 minutes for us to kind of drink the coffee and just chat. But we just talked about life. We never really talked about, business or work or anything like that. And then once the coffee was done, then we can go, hey, what do you need from me? How can I help? What can I do to support? And so then it transitioned into there. But we built up that relationship over, several weeks drinking coffee. And so it's always really cool to see the cultural impacts of when you take an amazing beverage like coffee. Obviously, I'm biased. But people really can come together and work together around it. The caffeine side for the military is, if anyone knows, has been on deployments, like Rippets and Monsters, like literally rule the world. Like I could have run Iraq with like Rippets, cigarettes, and dip. Like we could take over easy. Yeah. And so, but we would get supplies in, and we would, pass out Rippets and caffeine. But I still was really focused on health and wellness. So I wanted to find a better way to get the caffeine source, and obviously just black coffee is a phenomenal source, but there's a lot of acidity, a lot of bitterness. And so by cold brewing, you get more caffeine, more antioxidants, less acidity. So it's easier on your teeth, easier on your stomach. And so I found that as a great transition for a pre-workout and started just making it and passing it out to people, getting samples, having them try it. And so far, it was very well received, to put it that way. And so that was kind of a cool, I guess, customer validation story, if you would, of me kind of just doing something that I liked. Do other people like it? And then it kind of snowballs from there to get the actual business going and actually doing product development. And when I got home, my kitchen was just straight up like lab setup, like doing different brews and different methodologies like every day, just kind of tweaking it, and then continue to build up the brand that it is today.
What year did you start making it on your own?
I want to say, I think I started making it like 2015 at my house, and then I took that with me on the last deployment. It blurs together too much, but that sounds about right to me because I did so many back-to-back deployments in 2014. Yeah. So
you were basically set on coffee, or you had this interest in coffee about 2 years or so before you founded the business. Okay. And then where did your school, your training around leadership and running a business come in? You went to the Naval Academy, and then you got your graduate degree from USC, right?
Yep.
Okay. And that was in organizational leadership?
So the USC has a really cool program where it's a 1 year, basically Masters of Business for veterans. So
That's
everyone
cool.
in the group is veteran, or active duty still. And so it's only a 10-month program, so it's not a full year 2-year MBA. But they already assume you have the leadership skills as they do their interviews and kind of
Sure.
So they go a lot more into the entrepreneurship side. They go a lot more into the data analytics, all the other stuff that an MBA revolves around.
Yeah.
But they remove some of the leadership stuff out. And so I got that degree, and that from 2016 to 2017, right when I got out of the military. And then as soon as I got out of graduate school, we were finishing up building the IB location, which we launched in September.
Oh, okay.
And so
this is helpful. So you already were set on starting a coffee business before you went to graduate school. Okay. Did that click for you when you were still in the Navy?
Yeah, it's like when I remember the exact moment as I went to this thing called the Service Academy Career Conference. It was after my third deployment, and went in. I'm kind of dressed up. I don't like dressing up too much, but everyone was like really nice suits. Trying to network to get a job. And I basically had a panic attack. I was like, I don't want to work for anybody. I don't want this path for me. And so I kind of left there and then really started, all right, I want to do something for myself or start something on my own. And that was either like a gym or a coffee business. So I landed on coffee. And then from there, that kind of rolled into my last deployment of having this idea, building it up, and then fully launching the company in 2017.
Wow. Dude, I love that. The panic attack. So many entrepreneurs have that same experience, man.
I had great leaders and bosses in the military, and I've had some not so great. And so just the fact of like, hey, at the time I was 29, is like, do I want to keep taking orders for the rest of my adult life for the most part?
Yeah.
And the answer was like, hey, I have the opportunity to take a risk now, and so I took it.
Wow.
And so that's what kind of pushed me over the edge to start this.
And so what did that risk look like to you? Everyone's in a different situation when they step out to start a business, right? Some people have money, some people have no money. Like, you don't have to talk about the finances, but where were you in terms of your comfort level to start something where you had no idea what was going to happen?
I tend to think about more what I can do in like a year, and I overestimate that or underestimate what I can do. And so I leave myself a little bit short of what I can actually accomplish in a year, but over, 5-10 year period, I'm much further along. And so I went all in. Like I did 4 deployments in 5 years. I was able to save up. I had bought a house in 2013. And so basically I liquidated my TSP, which was like my 401k account from the time I had saved it in the military, and put it all into the business. So this to me was like an all or nothing thing. And that I don't recommend that. Just hands down, it creates a lot of stress. But I believe so much in it. And I wanted to give myself credit because I felt I've done very well for myself in my time in the military. And so this was like, hey, do you believe in yourself? And I said, yes. That's okay. There's risk. There's going to be turmoil. There's going to be really painful situations. But I believe you can get through this. If you barely go through 4 deployments, I think you can get through this, however it may be. But entrepreneurship, by far, is one of the toughest things I've ever done.
Dude, yeah, it's such an interesting thing to measure is how much risk is there here in doing this. And you put everything in there. So what was the business planning process like for you? How detailed were you before you actually got started? Because there's this debate in entrepreneurship where people say, just do it, just get started, right? Or some people say they like to be fully have it figured out, and I have the issue of overthinking sometimes and wanting to make sure it's super organized and clear. But I really am trying to just step out and do things without having it fully figured out first, because otherwise you'll never start. There is a lot to be said for that. What is your outlook on that debate or dilemma?
Yeah, I think obviously having a plan is very smart. Having some sort of path is definitely very beneficial. But again, when you get into this over-planning situation, you get the analysis paralysis, as everyone calls it. It will start, the doubt will start creeping in more and more and more. And so at some point, if it's truly worth it, you just got to pull the trigger and go.
Yeah.
And so I'm a big fan, and thank God I have my business partner, Derek, who is phenomenal, detail-oriented, plan-specific, and is great at taking my crazy ideas and actually formulating a way forward. And so that's been very beneficial for me. But again, I have a trouble where I think of where I want the business in 20 years. But unfortunately, there's a lot of steps to get to that point. And so sometimes I might overstep a step that was necessary. So planning is very important. And then just having unwavering belief that you will get there. No matter what challenges are thrown your way, there's always something you can do. You can quit. That's always something you can do. Or you can always find a way. So that's where I've gotten to over the past couple of years of building this from scratch, is that if you say it's over, then it's over. But if you say, no, there's something I can do to fix this or change it or do it, then you can keep moving forward and keep the ball moving.
So in the early years of Trident, once you got things started, did it start with your vision of having a retail location, or did you think you would just have cans you'd be selling in stores? How did that look?
So again, when it comes back to a plan situation, is that when you're young, you may take every opportunity that comes your way, which is what we did. We opened the tap room, which is the first of its kind of focusing only on nitro cold brew. And then we started canning. So we would distribute around San Diego into the Navy exchanges, and we built that up. And then kind of COVID hit, and nothing was great about COVID, but for us, it gave us more opportunities because people were doing more direct consumer shopping.
Right.
We could still stay open as a food establishment. So people would come to us because it was their sense of normalcy for the day. Like, okay, I can at least go get my cup of coffee. And so it's not so bad. And then distribution picked up because people were grocery shopping a lot more. So when COVID hit, we just kind of had so much opportunity that we just took it. And unfortunately, with over expansion, if you don't have the proper resources and things in place, it can it gave us some issues basically. So when we wanted to do is that we basically, to answer your question, we went all into every opportunity that came our way. So we were doing direct consumer, we were doing wholesale, and we were doing retail, our brick and mortar. And so now what we've learned is we're pivoting more into this retail space because the customers get an amazing experience. We have more of a direct relationship with them, as well as the direct consumer. When you go wholesale, the downside of that is you don't know who's buying your product off the shelf. There's no way in this age to really connect with them and create that connection and that kind of presence you want. Like you said, you just saw it, thought it was a cool brand, and picked it up.
Right.
We don't know that.
You never would have known.
Yeah, we don't know why you chose us or out of the 20 brands on the shelf. So here, we can explain ourselves more. They can get a little bit more of the story. They can try all 8 cold brews on tap, and then it creates that emotional connection a lot easier than just throw it on a shelf in a store and hopefully someone buys it. Hopefully someone doesn't, or someone doesn't. Who knows?
That's so interesting. I mean, the importance of knowing your customer goes such a long way, and the benefits of online digital products, or even physical products that are sold online. You still get to much better analytics and insight on who your customer is. Whereas if you're just selling a bunch to Sprouts, then you don't know who's coming in, like people like me, and taking one home. I bought one from there today.
Yep.
You never would have known.
And the only way we would truly know if somebody decides to maybe take a post of it and put it on social,
Right.
and put a story up. That's really about the only way we would know. Like, we know the volume that goes out because you can get reporting, but you have zero information of, demographic information that you would want to help continue to formulate and build out your customers. So for us, the shift into this space where we are pretty comfortable with, we still have some tweaks to make, but it allows us to, continue to create a brand that has a phenomenal customer base that is very passionate about health and wellness, that understands organic ingredients, that understands functional ingredients, that honestly care about their health. It's very sad to see in today's age, I think it's 30-40% of Americans are overweight. And then there's a lot more at risk for type 2 diabetes. And so that is a terrible thing to have us as Americans in such bad place from a health standpoint. And in my opinion, is because we've been misled by the food industry in a lot of cases.
Right.
So for us to provide a healthier option, because it's a lifestyle that I chose to live, and it's a lifestyle that I think a lot of people are turning towards. And so we can be that for them, which is an awesome opportunity for us.
So you keep bringing up this lifestyle of health and wellness and how much that means to you. How does that relate to Trident Cold Brew? You talked a little bit about maybe the ingredients, but how else?
So again, my dad's dad, my grandfather, was in the Navy, retired in the 60s, and when he found out I got an appointment to the Naval Academy, he was so excited. Was in World War II, did his time, but he was so amped. And so when I went away to the Naval Academy, that first summer, he had a stroke because he developed type 2 diabetes and had a stroke. So he was bedridden for the last year of his life. So when I was able to come home from school, go down and visit him and basically see my dad taking care of his dad. And I hate to say all because of some of the choices that my grandfather did choose in terms of dietary. It wasn't type 1 diabetes, it was type 2 diabetes. And so fast forward a few years, my dad just retired from the fire department when I graduated in 2008. And he was, at that point, a little bit overweight. Firefighters, if you guys don't know, the number one cause of death is heart attacks.
Really?
Yeah, just because sometimes they don't eat the healthiest when they're on shift. The stress of getting a 3 a.m. wake-up call to go on into the truck and go to a car accident or whatever, the stress of that and the dietary habits normally don't lead to very optimal health. And my dad, went into his doctor's appointment and came back with, hey, his A1C levels are elevated. He's very much at risk of being type 2 diabetic and need to take insulin for the rest of his life.
Oh, wow.
So backtracked in my memory, seeing what my grandfather looked like with my dad taking care of him, was like, oh crap, this is going to be me taking care of my dad in a few years. And so, my dad loves his morning coffee, but he put, coffee mate creamer in it, put Kahlua in it, put all the bad stuff that you're not supposed to, but that's what's available.
Yeah.
So worked with him. We started adding MCT oil. I started adding monk fruit sweetener. And then just say, hey, just go on like a 4-mile walk every day. So he started making those changes. He dropped 30 pounds, cleaned up his coffee habit, and his A1C levels went back down to normal. So he was no longer at risk of being diabetic.
Wow.
So seeing that firsthand and from a personal standpoint, it's like this, if we make small changes to something in our daily routine, which is coffee, we can have profound impact on our quality of life. So that's why the health and wellness umbrella for us is so important, because I've seen it firsthand. And it's had a tremendous impact on me because my dad is now 72 and he's living very healthy, which is great. And so I get to spend time with him. We get to go do walks. We get to do whatever because he's still in great physical shape. So that I know I'm not a solo story in that regard with people and relatives who are potentially diabetic or getting to that point. So that is why we kind of do what we do, because I've seen firsthand that it has a huge impact.
Wow. So, the inspiration behind that makes a lot of sense. And how do you, though, apply that to the brand today? How do you share that message through Trident in your marketing, in the actual product?
So one of our cold brews is called Son of a Sailor. So I am the fact a son of a sailor.
Oh, wow. Okay.
From my grandfather. And my dad's side of the family actually comes from a place outside of, it's called Tolima, Mexico. That's where I believe his grandmother was from. So the coffee we get from Chiapas, which is not too far away. And so we kind of tied that storytelling into it, because it's for me, that's my favorite part of this whole thing, is creating stories that connect people.
Yeah.
And so that is a fun one for us. And, basically did that to honor my grandfather. And so that is part of what we do in terms of the branding standpoint is, we have the opportunity to tell these really cool stories that have an emotional connection, not just dark roast.
Right.
That's one way that we figured the best way to stand out is symbology and storytelling are the two best ways that we as humans communicate.
That's cool. Yeah. And that reminds me of what you were talking about when you had that experience with the Israeli counterpart when you were deployed. That was a huge inspiration, aside from the health and wellness part, looking for this more natural pre-workout, right? A solution for that, as opposed to the dip and just other things that the guys deployed would consume. But that experience you had with this guy, it was about this connection, this culture you created that was not talking about work. And that, I think, is such a powerful part of the coffee culture in general. And if you can create your own brand that's focused on that, I think that was also a huge inspiration in the Starbucks brand, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had this, I think it was called, I'm going to butcher it. It was like third place, I think is what they called it. So you had homework and then the third place to go connect with people.
Yeah.
And so obviously that has changed and iterated from Starbucks over time as they've gone more through the drive-through model. And so, but again, going back to the craft beer scene here, is that when you go to a local brewery, people are sitting down, they're laughing, they're connecting, they're sharing, maybe some pain they're going through. Hey, buddy, let's go grab a beer. And so you can see that with alcohol. And then we're like, hey, how can we do that with maybe cold brew and coffee? So it's a very similar feel. And so again, we can do a lot of stuff with, health and wellness events, activations like run clubs, gyms, things like that, where people are normally being a little more communal anyway. And so that can extend outside of our physical brick and mortar spots to engage people when they're most likely being active outdoors and connecting with people.
Okay. Yeah. So what are some of those partnerships that you've explored or have established strategically? Whether it's like, for example, the beach cleanup where you put up a booth out in front, or I think there's something in La Jolla at a pool, this underwater workout thing. Yeah. Tell us about these things that you guys put your brand on for the reasons that you've shared already about what the values are of Trident.
I think, again, there's not a one-size-fits-all for people what they associate health and wellness to. I mean, there's plenty of things that, gluten-free, low sugar, vegetarian, carnivore. I mean, you can have a wide range of what people consider health and wellness.
Right.
And so the biggest thing for us, as long as the people are cutting out processed foods, staying active, those are the best bubbles we can work in because it is very overarching. Yeah. So there's Deep End Fitness that has gone nationwide. Okay, they've opened up chapters all over the U.S.
Deep End Fitness, okay.
And it's a crazy workout. Like you do a lot of underwater stuff, and then now they're transitioning to this hybrid program. So there's some out of the water stuff as well. And then, so a community like that is great because people are putting themselves outside of their comfort zone a little bit to work out, and you're doing it in this communal space. The beach cleanup is another example. People are sacrificing their Saturdays to come and be a part of something bigger than themselves and keep the beach clean. And then, you have PB Run Club, same thing. People are coming together, especially coming out of COVID. We're social creatures by nature. So right. When you get isolated like that, you miss those connections. And so things like that where we can bring people together that are doing good for themselves and doing good for the environment around them. That's how we want to be involved with.
Yeah. So as far as the events and the places where you show up, you get the idea of what Trident is all about when you mention those types of events you just listed. How about the actual branding that people see, the designs on the cans? Or the Trident itself. I mean, you see right here, we got the mermaid with the Trident. And I mean, it's really cool, man. It catches the attention for sure. And all the different cold brews you have on tap here, it seems like there's a story with each one, right? You said son of a sailor. And then that's personal too, which is pretty cool. And there's a bunch of others. How do you come up with these ideas?
That to me was the most fun part because that truly let my creative side out and figure out, hey, how do we storytell? How do we create these symbols that we can tie into these stories and kind of make this work? So one of ours is Link in the Chain, and that coffee comes from Ethiopia, which is the birthplace of coffee. Mm-hmm. That's where the first kind of stories around coffee coming around was a goat herder was herding his flock. And he noticed a couple of his goats were eating this plant and then bouncing off the walls. And they're just going crazy. And so that's, was the coffee plant tree. And that has like the coffee berries. And then inside that's the seed, which is what we roast and provide as coffee. But the coffee berries still have caffeine in it. And so that's kind of a fun origin story. That ties into the fourth law of the Navy, which is basically don't be a weak link in the chain. And so for us, since we were this new category of coffee that had a very long history, if this cold brew we created was a weak link, then that was not going to provide progress to the next generation to further push us further down the line. So we had to be as strong of a link as possible. So that one for us is, again, nautical based, with the story behind Ethiopia, which is the birthplace of coffee. So we're paying homage to what came before us and doing our best to pay it forward for the next generation to make it better.
That's cool, man. Yeah, so you really are getting creative with linking aspects of the Navy and coffee origins and health and wellness and bringing them together. And has it been all you, mostly you? Like, how have you collaborated with your team or just outside influences around coming up with these ideas like the one you just described?
Well, a lot of those kind of came to me early on. Like I have another 20 that we don't have listed up right now. And so for me, that was like the fun kind of 2 a.m. And then I would kind of take those ideas to the team and like, hey, what do you guys think about this? And this is what I'm thinking, how we can connect it. And obviously, at 2 a.m., you're not probably thinking pretty clearly. So I wanted to make sure there was some traction behind, my mental state at that point to actually make it work. And so we have 8 on tap right now, and those are the ones that have stuck really well. But then we have seasonal ones that can come out that are, kind of we keep in our back pocket for when we're ready to do it every quarter to bring to life. So it's definitely a creative side, but then I can run it by people and kind of get feedback to make sure I'm not too far off the mark.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes 2 a.m. is where you get actually the most creative influence.
Oh yeah, it depends. Like goes ebbs and flows for me, but when you're like in that flow state, it makes everything so much easier. It's almost like when you get over writer's block and you can just go at it.
Yeah.
And so I'd get to there a few times during like the first like year or two developing the stuff, and then boom, it all came together.
Mm-hmm. What was growth like when you started in 2017? How did you scale? When did you first bring on partners and employees to help you do things, and what tasks did you delegate first?
I am pretty bad at delegation, and so that has taken a while for me to get more comfortable with. So when we first started, it was basically my brother and I were doing, all the back end side of the house, roasting, brewing, packaging. And we have some amazing horror stories of our canning line just literally running awry. So my brother and I have had, a little trauma from that thing, but it's worked out.
Yeah.
Then we brought on some coffee tenders and helped get the IB spot going. And, it didn't take off like crazy. We were getting great feedback. And then we've learned in every iteration that we've gotten better. So then we started, we added espresso to our menu because we thought people would love cold brew so much, but we still had to remember that not everyone knew what cold brew was. So we had to meet them where they're at in their coffee journey. And then as they get comfortable with us, like, oh, this coffee is great. Now it's, 80 degrees out. Oh, let me try one of your cold brews.
Yeah.
So that was customer discovery that I went too far ahead and didn't realize what was the most important thing to bring people along for the journey. And so that was a good sticking point for us to understand, hey, like it's okay to pivot. We're still staying on our core thesis. Nothing's really changed. We just need to make some changes and make it for the better.
That's interesting. So you basically started off with this idea, hey, we are all about cold brew. This is our thing. This is what we think is going to hit. But the reality was, and it still is the case, people, I say, oh, I'm having cold brew. Some people still ask, what is that? It's crazy to me. I drink cold brew every day. But it's accurate. So at what point did it click that you do need to pivot and add this to your product offering, add an espresso? Was it a customer? Was it an experience with a customer and feedback you got? How did that come about?
Yeah, it goes back to kind of the initial part of this conversation is like letting your ego go a bit. Mm-hmm. Like in my head, cold brew is the best way to drink coffee, and I wanted people to love it so much as I did. But that's not the case. You can't force it on people.
Right.
You got to meet them where they're at. Mm-hmm. And so again, it was letting the ego take a little bit of a back seat, make some adjustments. And so I think it was a few customers coming in, and it was actually cyclists, because cyclists were dead set on just, hey, I want an espresso. I was like,
not filling up the stomach but
I was like, hey, we have this cold brew concentrate. It's great. They're like, no, like I want my espresso because this is how I drink coffee. So I was like, oh, just because I drink coffee this way doesn't mean you want to drink coffee this way. See. So it was, again, you got to get out of your own way a little bit.
So it was like people coming into the shop thinking it's a coffee shop, and then they realize, oh, you guys don't have what I'm looking for.
Yes. And so we just went in, we opened the tap room, did distribution, did direct consumer. So we're getting data a lot. And so then that helps us formulate how we want to make changes. So adding the espresso has been one of the best things because we can meet new customers and not get them I'm just having too much sensation when it comes to, hey, 8 cold brews on tap. I'm used to maybe having 1 available at a coffee shop I go to. You have 8. So it's like, hey, if you want espresso, hey, we got you. No worries. You want drip? We got you. And so that was a really important lesson for us to learn and make that change.
Yeah. What would you say has been the biggest challenge you've experienced so far in the entrepreneurial journey? It might be related to what you just said. I don't know. But do you have something in mind?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, I'm going to go back from my standpoint. I'm my own worst enemy and my best asset. So it's learning that double-edged sword of balance to figure out, hey, are you hurting yourself right now? Or are you helping yourself right now? And you just have to be brutally honest. There's times where like I have been the problem. And however I came to accepting that, may have been a little bit slow to it. So I think the biggest thing I've learned in this entrepreneurship journey is like, I'm still growing as a person. I'm still learning all the time. And I want to be learning all the time, but it doesn't mean I know everything. And so you're supposed to be the subject matter expert. You're supposed to be this guy who, really helped change this cold brew space, but that doesn't mean you know everything. Yeah. So we are in the best effort right now to, during the seed round we're raising capital right now to get amazing advisors across, obviously in the coffee space, but also just in business in general, so that it's not me who has to have all the answers. It's going to be some of these advisors we can bring who have been there, done that, so I don't have to go through the headaches and pains of just not knowing or being dumb enough not to ask. That is something that I unfortunately took with me from the military, since we were such a small community in the military. There's only like 1,200 of us, right, and we're expected to be the subject matter expert of our topic. And so if I didn't know the answer, that would look really bad from me to my boss. So I could always say, hey, sir, I don't know, I'll find out. But I always tried to make sure I had something prepared for them. So I took that on as, again, an ego thing, which if you can, any entrepreneurs, if you can just drop your ego from the start and be very open to ideas and not take anything personally, that will help you drastically. Sure. So I'm still in that process of taking the ego out of the equation and looking at it from a very professional standpoint. It's not an attack. It's not personal. Some people just have opinions, and that could actually be very beneficial. It's not a bad thing. Yeah. You don't know everything.
Right. That's well said. What is your next big goal right now? What is the biggest project you're working on with Trident? You just got PB location started, right? You've got the other 2 locations in San Diego. You've got national distribution through Sprouts, right? Are you trying to get more presence with retail locations nationally and in California? What is the next big project?
So kind of the good and bad is that we are getting a lot of opportunities. There is a lot of people want to open more retail stores. And so that's just going to take a lot of resources to do. And so if we want to go down that route, I think it's great. But we have a new product out right now that is really going to be great for direct to consumer. It's a instant cold brew with functional ingredients like MCT oil, mushrooms, electrolytes, and L-theanine. So again, with this health and wellness umbrella, we can tap it all into something that's super convenient. So people can take on the go. They can, we're working on getting them in stick packs right now. And that way it's a very convenient and portable stuff. Because our initial thesis was the can is the perfect thing for portability and quality. Right. So quality and convenience were always this thing that we wanted to bring together for coffee. But it has to be kept refrigerated. Yeah. So that limits us in some capacities. But this new product breaks down those barriers for us and allows us to reach more people quite easily and get them the experience with cold brew, just in a kind of very nuanced health and wellness kind of facet.
So how does that work? Is it like a powder in a packet? Yep. How do they make it?
So we're combining the ingredients and making it down in Imperial Beach. And so we take our ingredients, we mix it all up. And then right now it's just in bulk packaging. So it's basically a scoop, comes in a bag, you scoop out, 1 serving, and that's the drink. Add water. But we are trying to move into the stick pack area, just like the hydration scene has blown up. Liquid IV really took it to the next level, and then LMNT is crushing it right now. So we want to kind of follow that format because it has allowed for mass adoption. In the stick pack format, because all you need is a bottle of water. Yeah. You can just shake it up and you're good to go.
Yeah, that's brilliant, man. That's a great idea. And I mean, this is going to be something that you can sell online. Yeah. Was there other products aside from maybe merchandise that you were selling online?
Yeah, we had our roasted coffee, and then we do sell our 6-packs. But again, one of the biggest concerns once COVID hit is obviously shipping prices went up quite drastically. Yeah. And so, we insulate it, we do everything we can and still ship it out. But, sometimes USPS is not the most courteous with your packages. Sure. And things get damaged.
Yeah.
So that's been one of our biggest, obviously, complaints around this product is when you try to move it around, there's always damage in some capacity. So by pivoting into this powder space, there's very little to none considerations to have to worry about damaged product unless someone takes a knife to the bag and stabs it.
Yeah. It's
so
much more shipping proof.
Yeah, and it's much lighter weight. You get 30 servings that weighs around 9 ounces to ship. So it really opens the game up for us to offer something very unique and get it to as many people as we can via online.
Sure. Yeah, that's cool, man. Is there a impact that you really want to leave the audience with that you want to have on a certain community? Let's say the veteran or active military community, or just customers in general who are interested in this brand.
Yeah, it's a part of my own personal discovery is that you'd be surprised how much power you have within you, like how great you really are. Again, the military really tried to beat it out of us in many regards. So I had to really tap in deep because there's been a lot of struggle growing this brand. We've run into so many issues with equipment, with this, with that. It doesn't matter. There's always a problem just waiting for you around the corner. And so finding the way to dig deep and like find that other reservoir of power and energy. So it's basically the Eminem song, Till I Collapse.
Yeah.
It's just find the inner strength within you. And everyone has that. And I just hope that everyone who's listening to this finds that genius inside of them to make the world a little bit better of a place.
I like that. And that might be related. This is a question. It might overlap a lot, but I tend to ask, what's an entrepreneurial life hack that you can share with the audience from your experience that goes against the mainstream belief that again, might be very similar to what you just said?
I think it's, again, try to drop the ego as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Ask as much of advice ask as many people that will give you the time of day about business, everything that goes into it. It could be about taxes. It could be about LLC formation. It could be about whatever. The internet and YouTube are phenomenal. So you can always kind of research more and more, but do not be afraid to ask the question. You will hinder yourself dramatically by thinking you know the answer, and surround yourself with really smart people.
Yeah.
The bigger you can elevate yourself into kind of the next layer, that's the best thing you can do for yourself, because you're going to rise up and you're going to hopefully bring those people up around you as well. And so just surround yourself with amazing people and don't be afraid to ask questions.
That's good, man. And it sounds like you're putting that into greater action by getting this board, right? Or the advisors you mentioned earlier. So that's cool. You're living by that, man. Well, this is awesome, dude. I love the brand you've built. I love that we got a location in PB. I can easily get here now and just come here in the mornings. Imperial Beach, Coronado might have been a little far of a drive for the mornings.
Well, I said we have Ocean Pacific too. So now my goal is to like stay here again, get a workout on my way home. So that's always a good spot to hit up. And again, live the kind of that health and wellness stuff, the ice baths, the saunas, the lifting. It's all great. I
love it, man. Well, is there one person in your network who you would recommend I have on the Nichols and Dime show? Someone entrepreneurial?
Ooh, yeah. I'd say Connor Tor of Tor Knives. He's out in El Cajon, and they truly have built a phenomenal business. They self-manufacture all their stuff, and it truly is super impressive to see their facility. And that team is some of the greatest guys we've run into. So I would definitely recommend, and I can always ask if you'd be willing to come on. But that team is very inspirational to us. Again, another veteran doing amazing things. And so again, seeing what's possible. But it's through hard work, it's through dedication, it's through sacrifice, unfortunately. But you can always kind of create this life for yourself if you put the time and energy into it.
Yeah, thank you, man. Awesome. Yeah, I'll follow up on that. I love that type of business, man. I had someone on recently, the Compliance Edge, Yoni. He runs that company in Point Loma. So it's super cool type of business, especially when it's veteran owned.
Yeah.
But good stuff, man. Well, what's your social media? How can people find you online? How can people become a customer Trident?
We obviously have tridentcoffee.com, at Trident Coffee for social. And then mine is at Craft Your Legacy. So it's something I try to live by. and it's always a work in progress. Just put it that way.
Yeah, well, that's the moral of the story here. Is we're never going to become the complete expert, right? There's always something more to learn. There's usually someone else who's smarter than you who you can benefit from. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, Eric, man, thanks so much for sharing the journey and what you're out here to do, what your goals are with Trident. Like I said, love the brand, and I hope people can come check it out, especially now that you got this new location in PB. And I'm excited to see the continued growth and success.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, we're loving being in the PB area. It's just a great community for us.
Awesome, man. Alrighty. Thanks, Eric.
Cheers, brother.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Nichols and Dimes Show. Please hit the subscribe button on YouTube and follow my Instagram page at Nichols and Dimes. The podcast Instagram page is at Nichols and Dimes Show. And please like any of the videos you come across on either platform and leave a comment, leave feedback. It helps me to improve and innovate and to continue to scale and bring more interesting guests to the Nichols and Dimes Show. Thank you all for the support, and we'll see you next time.